This is part 5 of chapter 1. I'm working number 27. I need to do 2/3 times 1 over 3/4. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the side and figure out a way what this is. Okay. So I am going to do, this is my main fraction bar. This should be it. When I'm writing it, I exaggerate that fraction bar. This is the same thing as 1 divided by 3/4, which is the same as 1, which you can think of as 1 over 1, times, flip that one, 4/3, which is 4/3. Anytime you have 1 over a fraction, you're going to just have the reciprocal of that fraction. So this is the same thing as 2/3 times 1 over 3/4 is 4/3. So multiply, look for cancellations. I don't have any cancellations on either diagonal or up and down. You might be tempted to reduce straight across, but that does not work. So we multiply straight across. 2 times 4 is 8. 3 times 3 is 9. Our answer is 8/9. Okay, so let's add mixed numbers here. 4 and 1/2 plus 5 and 1/2. There are 2 ways to deal with mixed numbers when you're adding and subtracting. Okay, I'm going to work it both ways. First off, if I have 4 and 1/2 plus 5 and 1/2, often what we do is we add our whole numbers together first. 4 plus 5 is 9. And then you add your fractions. 1/2 plus 1/2. Remember, when you're adding fractions, you have to have a common denominator, which we do. So our answer, that denominator never changes. And then you add across the top. 1 plus 1 is 2. So right now I have 9 and 2 halves. But 2 halves is a 1, correct? So this is essentially, what this means is 9 plus 2 over 2. 4 and 1/2 is the same thing as 4 plus 1/2. Okay? So this is the same thing as 9 plus 2 over 2, which is the same as 9 plus 1, so my answer is 10. So this is the first method. It can get confusing. What a lot of us tend to do is we take our mixed numbers and we change them into improper fractions. Improper fractions are, in general, easier to work with than mixed numbers. They're harder to understand what the value is, but they're easier to work with. If I take this and I go around the world, 2 times 4 is 8. 8 plus 1 is 9. I have 9 halves plus, do the same thing here. 2 times 5 is 10. 10 plus 1 is 11. 11 halves. Now we have our common denominator, which is a 2. 9 plus 11 is 20. And then 20 divided by 2 is 10. I find this much easier. But it is your turn. Your choice. Okay? All right, number 29. We're talking about percentages now. Right? This percentage as a fraction in lowest terms and as a decimal. Let's talk about going to decimals first, because that's what we end up doing a whole lot. A percentage is literally per cent. And cent is a prefix that means 100. So 0.5% is 0.5 per 100, literally. Okay? Remember with 100, when you were dividing, you moved your decimal place 2. When you're multiplying, you moved your decimal place 2. That's important here too. When you have a percentage and you want to go back to a decimal, you're going to take this place, wherever it is, and move it to this direction. So 0.5% is equal to, fill in your zeros, I moved it to here. So this is the same thing as 0.005. Okay, so that's the decimal number that's generally the easiest to deal with. Okay, now we need to go to a fraction. Again, I find it easier to go to the decimal first and then use your place values and create your fraction and then reduce it. So this is going to be 5 over, it's got 3 decimal places, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So I put it over 1,000. And then I reduce this. Divide this by 5, and the top and bottom by 5. And you end up with 1 over 200. So 0.5% as a decimal is 0.005. 0.5% as a fraction is 1 over 200. Okay. Write 3/4 as a decimal number and as a percent. Okay. So what we're doing on these problems is we're just going through the relationship of fractions and decimals and percentages. It's quite easy to go from a fraction to a decimal, decimal to fraction. It's easy to go decimal to percent, percent to decimal. It's not as easy to go directly from fraction to percent, or vice versa. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and convert it to a decimal, and then take that decimal and convert it to a percent. Remember, a fraction is a division. 3/4 is the same thing as 3 divided by 4. And you can use your calculator for that if you don't know this. 3 divided by 4 is 0.75. So this is the 3/4 written as a decimal. Okay, now right here we started off with a percentage, and to go to a decimal we moved it left 2. Okay, here we have the decimal, we have this side, and we want to go to this side. We're still going to be moving our decimal place 2 spots. See right here, if I move it 2 spots, I'm back to the 0.5. I do the same thing here. To go from 0.75 to a decimal, I'm going to move it right 2 spots. So this is now 75%. By the way, if you leave off that percent, it is wrong. 75 and 75% are different numerical values. You can't just do that. Okay? Okay, so number 31. What is 20% of 300? Okay, first of all, this word here, of, this is a keyword that usually means multiplication. Now I had to say usually because sometimes you'll have a word problem where they give you context and then they use the word of in just the English language sense. But often it means multiplication. What is 20% of 300? What we're going to use here is the percent equation. So what I'm going to do is the value I'm looking for is I take the percent as a decimal, change that to a decimal. This is the same thing as 0.2 because that was 20, and I move, which my decimal place was right here, and I move it 2 spots to right here. So this is the same as 0.2 of 300. What I need to calculate is 0.2 times 300. And when I do that, I get 60. So 20% of 300 is 60. That's the answer I'm looking for here. Okay. What is 2/3 of 27? If you pattern match here, we're kind of doing the same thing. It's just our numerical values changed. Here I was giving a percentage, here I'm given a fraction. Here I'm given different values here, but it's the same English pattern. So what I'm going to do is exactly what I did here. Here I multiplied, here I multiply. 2/3 thirds times 27. And I can write this as 27 over 1. I can reduce on this diagonal. Divide this by 3 to get a 1. Divide this by 3 to get a 9. Now multiply straight across. 2 times 9 is 18. Over 1 times 1 is 1. So your answer is simply 18. Okay. So for these two examples, the last two in this chapter, what we need to do is we need a formula which looks like this. The fraction of change is equal to the change over the original. Okay, so a daily dosage increases from 4 tablets to 5 tablets. What is the fraction of change and the percent of change in daily dosage? We know how to change a fraction to a decimal, and we know how to change a decimal to a percent. So if we can find the fraction of change, we can get to here. Okay, so let's look at this. The fraction of change is the change over the original. The original value is 4. Fraction of change is equal to the original amount was 4. Okay, now for the change, I changed from 4 to 5. So I can do 5 minus 4 to get a 1. The change is 1. So the fraction of change is 1/4. So now I need to take 1/4 and convert it to a decimal, and then a decimal to a fraction. So to a percentage. So 1/4 is equal to 1 divided by 4, which is 0.25, which is equivalent to, move this 2 spots to get 25%. So the fraction of change was 1/4. It was a 25% change. It was a 25% increase. Okay. This one was an increase. This one is a decrease, but it works exactly the same way. Okay. So a person was drinking 40 ounces of fluid per day, but this was reduced to 10 ounces of fluid per day. What is the percent change in fluid intake? We're still going to find the fraction of change first, and then we'll go to the percent from there. So the change is, okay, what was my original? My original was 40. So I'm going to have a 40 in the bottom. And I went from 40 down to 10. So 40 minus 10 is 30. So the change is 30, which goes right there. Okay, so the fraction of change, let's go ahead and reduce this. Divide both of those by 10, and you get 3/4. Okay, so 3/4 is equal to 3 divided by 4, which is 0.75. And now move your decimal over 2 spots, which is equivalent to 75%. So that is a 75% reduction in the dosage. And this is the end of chapter 1.